Part 4 starts with Miles and the group, who are desperate for aid since Charlie hasn't recovered from her wounds from earlier. Miles decides to seek help from an old friend named Kipling who is living in Philadelphia. Meanwhile, Tom Neville catches wind of this and reports it to Monroe, who orders the captain to find and capture Miles. Once inside Kipling's house, Miles leaves Nora, Aaron, and Charlie to go locate Danny. Not long after he departs, Tom and the militia soldiers storm the house and capture Charlie and the others. Charlie is then sedated and thrown into a prison cell. After a while, she awakens to find her mother in the room with her. Since Charlie thought her mother was dead all these years, we can see her distraught, confused face. On the other side of the town, Tom has Aaron and Nora tied up. Strasser visits Rachel and Charlie in their prison cell. After emotionally taunting them for a while, he removes the two from the cell. Meanwhile, Miles realizes his friend's situation and decides to go after Tom. When Tom arrives at his house, he sees Miles holding Julia at knife point. Miles demands that Tom free his friends. Strasser takes the Matheson girls to where Danny is being held. Although Danny is bloody and beaten, he is relieved to be reunited with his family. Back at Tom's house, he agrees to abide by Miles' demands since his wife's life is at stake. Tom frees Nora and Aaron. He then gives Miles the location of Danny's prison cell. Miles's bargain isn't over, so he locks Mr. and Mrs. Neville in a closet. At the prison cell, the happy reunion of the Matheson family is cut short by Monroe. Monroe wants Rachel to either make an amplifier machine or one of her children gets killed. Charlie is willing to die if it means preventing Monroe from having power and killing thousands of people. However, Rachel, true to her motherly duties, won't let her daughter die, so she agrees to help Monroe. Through a flashback, we learn that Monroe's entire family was killed when they were hit by a drunk driver on the way to see a movie. When he contemplated suicide, Miles had talked him down and told him that the two of them were family. At present, Rachel starts her work with the amplifier, while Charlie and Danny are reinterred in a prison cell. Luckily, the siblings bust out and knock out their guard and bust out and search for their mother. Thanks to Tom's insight, Miles and the team arrive at the location where the two siblings are kept. Nora wants Aaron to stay outside with a sack of bombs to facilitate their escape while she and Miles go inside. Meanwhile, Rachel completes the amplifier and restores power to Monroe. On the other side of the building, Charlie and Danny are cornered by Monroe's soldiers, but thankfully, Miles and Nora save them just in time. In Rachel's workshop, Strasser makes unwanted advances to her. Irritated, Rachel attacks Strasser with a hammer. He initially overpowers her, but she manages to grab a sword and stab him. Just then, Miles walks in on her staring over the dead man's body. Soon, Monroe arrives at the scene with his soldiers and starts firing at Miles and Rachel. Miles tells Rachel to go find her kids. After killing all of Monroe's guards, Miles and Monroe reach a stalemate. Both have guns on each other, but neither can pull the trigger. The series flashes back to a time when Miles and Monroe were children. They were drawing a design on their wrists, which is the current militia symbol M, standing for Monroe and Matheson. Back at present, Monroe pleads for Miles to come back to the Republic, but Miles is disgusted with what his former best friend has become. When Miles renounces Monroe, Monroe is enraged and starts attacking Miles. In the meantime, Nora succeeds in getting Charlie and Danny out of the building. Rachel also catches up with them. Soon enough, Aaron detonates the bombs, thus allowing the group to escape. Monroe puts a kill order on Miles, who jumps out a window. He catches up with the others and they escape the compound. As the group heads across an empty restaurant, they hear choppers. Looking up, they spot a military helicopter, gun trained on them. It turns out that Monroe has put the power amplifier in action. Not long after, the helicopter starts firing the group and even launches a rocket that blows the place up. Thankfully, the group survives by shielding through a walk-in fridge. Nora points out that she knows a nearby rebel camp in Westchester, so the group heads out. In the next scene, Charlie and Nora disguise themselves in militia uniforms and drive a wagon loaded with coffins to cross Philadelphia borders. Although the guard at the border gate insists on seeing what's inside the wagon, he doesn't find anything suspicious. The group then successfully makes it out. Just as they arrive outside the city, they see helicopters emerge over the horizon. It turns out that the choppers are headed toward the rebel group in Westchester. Soon after, we see the militia helicopters ambush the camp, killing everyone inside. Learning this, Rachel suggests they fight power with power. She then mentions a friend who lives nearby. He may be able to help with some rocket launchers. With the Westchester camp ambushed, Nora suggests they go to rebel headquarters in Annapolis while Miles and Rachel set out to find the friend. Next, Charlie, Aaron, and Nora arrive at the rebel headquarters, where the commanders are already aware of Monroe's airstrikes. Nora tells them about Miles and Rachel's trip to get rocket launchers. They are going to war against the Monroe Republic. Meanwhile, Nate spies Charlie and her group through binoculars. He and other militia soldiers, under the command of his dad, Tom, are scoping out rebel camps. When Tom learns that Charlie and the group are nearby, he orders his son to call in air strikes. But Nate has had enough. The militia is killing too many families and children. Fearing Nate is misjudging because of his affection for Charlie, Tom beats him to the ground. He then disowns his son, commanding him to never come home again. Elsewhere, Rachel and Miles meet up with her friend John Sanborn. Rachel tells about the Monroe situation to Sanborn and pleads for help with ammunition. In the woods, Nate finds Charlie and finally reveals his true name. That is Jason Neville. Charlie is quick enough to realize that he is actually Major Tom Neville's son. Nate warns her of his father's impending air strike. Back at Sanborn's house, he informs Rachel that Flynn got to Grace and has her captive. He adds that Flynn's gotten to him too, and apologizes before knocking out Rachel and Miles with a sonic cannon. At the camp, Charlie warns the rebel commanders of the pending air strike, and they get ready to fight back. Meanwhile, Rachel and Miles regain consciousness to find they're tied up. Sanborn informs that Flynn is on his way to get Rachel. After struggling for a while, Miles breaks out of his restraints and knocks John out. He and Rachel quickly grab rocket launchers and head toward the rebel camp. Next, Tom returns to Philadelphia and reports to Monroe that he's located Charlie and the group at the rebel camp. Tom seems rattled, so when Monroe asks what's the matter, he tells him that Nate is dead. Monroe has his helicopters sent across the camp. Soon enough, a firefight breaks, killing a couple of rebel soldiers. Thankfully, Miles and Rachel pull up in a wagon with the rocket launchers. Miles attempts to aim the rocket launcher at the helicopter carrying the amplifier, but is disturbed and wounded by another chopper's rockets. With his uncle knocked out, Danny runs into the open and grabs the rocket launcher. He successfully brings down the chopper with the amplifier, and with no power, the attack is over. Unfortunately, due to the power loss, the automated guns in the choppers malfunction, and Danny is shot multiple times. He falls to the ground, dead. In the aftermath of Danny's death, Charlie and Rachel are devastated. They decide they must kill Monroe for Danny. In Philadelphia, Flynn visits Monroe and introduces himself along with Sanborn. He claims that he wants to help Monroe in taking over the United States. Back at the rebel camp, Rachel sobbingly cuts open Danny's abdomen to extract a mysterious blinking capsule. Later that night, rebel leader General Wayne Ramsey suggests they regroup at an Echo base. Miles promises to help the rebels fight. He knows how to beat Monroe, but he will need his own men, that is, former senior militia officers. Nora and Miles set out to find Jim Hudson in hopes of getting him in to kill Monroe. With Miles and Nora gone, the remaining rebels start retreating to Echo Base. Meanwhile, Aaron removes 2 pendants from his backpack. When he leaves the room, the pendants mysteriously turn on. It turns out that they have been activated remotely by Flynn. He tells Monroe that he has been randomly activating the pendants to track them. Miles and Nora head towards Jim Hudson's location, which is a town called Culpeper. As Miles and Nora set off for Culpeper, a traitorous rebel named Brian overhears their plans and sells the info out to a militia captain, Joseph Deckert, who is camping in the North Virginia woods. At Echo Base, Rachel examines the capsule she extracted from Danny's corpse under a microscope and records its serial number. Next, Miles and Nora arrive in Culpeper. They find Hudson inside a library. When Miles approaches him, Hudson insists Miles has mistaken him for someone else. After taking the pair into a back room, Hudson aims his gun at Miles and tells him to leave immediately. He still hates Miles for not killing Monroe when he had the chance. This is when they were still in the Monroe militia. Miles says that he has come to seek Hudson's help in finishing the job. Back at Echo Base, Rachel notices the flashing pendants and becomes alarmed. Suddenly, a siren sounds and the rebel members notice a convoy of militia Humvees marching towards Echo Base. At Culpeper, Hudson tells Miles that as much as he hates Monroe, he has a wife and a quiet existence now, and he does not want to lose that. In the meantime, the rebels hurry everyone out of Echo Base's compound before Monroe's men arrive. As Charlie readies to leave, she realizes her mom is nowhere to be found. Rachel is in the lab, destroying the pendants with sulfuric acid. Aaron freaks out, but Rachel remarks that Flynn was using the pendants to track them. As the pendants dissolve, a stunned Aaron realizes that there were flash drives inside them. Suddenly, the Humvees ram through the gate, and militia troops spread out. Flynn rummages through the building and finds the dissolved flash drives. Outside Hudson's place, Nora is upset Hudson didn't agree to join them. As they are talking, Captain Joseph Deckert and his militia kill squad march down the road toward Culpeper. Meanwhile, Flynn flashes back 16 years when he was informed about the devastating news. His son Edward Flynn was killed in action in Kabul, Afghanistan. In the present, as Monroe's men search the compound, Charlie realizes the only way out is to fight back. While hiding, Rachel confesses she was working on a weapon for Flynn when he was the Assistant Secretary of the Department of Defense. That is when the power went out. Suddenly, Flynn calls out to Rachel over a megaphone. He shouts that he didn't come for the pendants, but Rachel, and he is not leaving without her. After seeing the militia soldiers, Miles rushes back and informs Hudson about the situation. Hudson is furious, convinced that Monroe's men followed Miles to Culpeper. Back at Echo Base, 2 guards storm into the room where Charlie, Aaron, and Rachel are hiding. When Charlie takes one out with her crossbow, the group makes a run for it. Meanwhile, in Culpeper, Monroe's kill squad surrounds the town. Hudson, Miles, and Nora show. When Captain Deckard spies Hudson's wife watching from a nearby house, he goes after her. Back at Echo Base, Charlie reunites with Aaron, and the two set out to find Rachel. Unfortunately, Flynn captures Rachel and plans to take her back to Monroe in Philadelphia. Flynn is interested in building a better, safer world with Rachel's help. When the militia prepares to leave, Charlie stops them with a storm of gunfire. Rachel quickly breaks free long enough to escape with Aaron and Charlie. Meanwhile, Deckard breaks into Hudson's house and corners his wife. Thankfully, Hudson arrives just in time to kill Deckard from behind and save his wife. After the incident, Hudson decides to join Miles' cause to kill Monroe. A while later, Miles and Nora meet up with the rest of the group at their rendezvous point in the woods. In the final scene of the episode, the series flashes back to the night of the blackout. Flynn and his colleagues are seated at a round table at the tower, discussing a mission. He talks with Ben over a video, where Ben asks if Flynn is certain about his decision. Flynn grips his dead son's dog tags and disturbingly says that it is time to execute the virus. Subscribe to see more videos like this, turn on the notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Don't forget to watch the next upcoming series. Thanks for watching.